Just 2 days ago on this podcast, we talked about the possibility of Perrion Winfrey cracking the rotation at the defensive tackle position. Well, that door is shut, and it is shut for good. Your latest Locked On Browns with your host, Jeff Lloyd.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound, LGB, and the LOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We were going to continue with our training camp preview series, and we're going to do that, but obviously we're going to get some breaking news here first. I am Jeff Lloyd, man, here 7 seasons now with Locked On Browns. I appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. Join the everyday crowd, and the best way to do that is to subscribe to the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Locked On Browns is always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. A lot of big outlets going away from day-to-day coverage, covering your team on a daily basis. Well, Locked On, that is the bread and butter. That is the existence of our group over here with the Locked On Podcast Network. So if others are going to differ away from it, that should only enhance what we do. So make sure you're here every day to get your best Cleveland Browns coverage. As I said, we have our first blip of the 2023 season. It's not an injury. It's not a disgruntled player as far as contract. Talked 2 days ago here when we did the defensive tackle positional preview, and hinted, that everybody here basically has a clean slate in the defensive tackle room. One of those players that we highlighted was second-year defensive tackle out of Oklahoma, Perrion Winfrey. But Perrion Winfrey, there's been many transgressions. Obviously, there were a couple times last season, was put away from the team for a little while. Even had Myles Garrett need to go to the coaching staff and say, the young rookie needs to kind of be brought down to earth a little bit, get straightened out, get a little bit focused. Obviously, his first incident in the offseason, which he ended up getting, I don't want to label it a total restraining order, but obviously ordered to stay away from a certain young woman, worked out through the legal system. And then you get to what happens last night. And look, this time of the year, where is exactly your focus? And to be completely fair, we don't know enough about this situation right now to know if there's any reason whatsoever that, Perrion Winfrey essentially did anything wrong. But as far as Cleveland Browns are concerned, he did everything wrong, because we all know what the term final means. When you're giving a warning and it gets to, a final warning. So it didn't matter if he actually did anything or not. But the fact that his name came up in another negative light, Cleveland Browns had no choice but to move on from Perrion Winfrey. This is something he's brought on himself. You can't be here in a year and just go through all the amount of incidents that Perrion Winfrey did. Eventually, your spot on the team, if you can't be counted on, obviously, to just stay out of trouble off the field, what can they truly count on you for when you were physically on the field? What does this exactly do? Well, we've talked about the fact that Cleveland Browns need to pursue a veteran defensive tackle. And we've talked about that in light of the players on the roster. It was one positional group that there's still just a glaring weakness. Does this accelerate it? Does this exacerbate the fact that the Browns are going to get in, immediately? I'm sure they'd love to have somebody in here ready to go by Saturday when they begin training camp. But, some of these veterans, not everybody's in such a hurry to, run to a camp in July, or maybe even early August, or maybe even mid-August, with some of these veterans. So the Browns obviously going to have to do their due diligence in that regard here. Open roster spot. We'll see how they fill that in the immediate future. If it is, in fact, a defensive tackle or is another player they want to get a look at. Again, we've always talked about, still, do they bring in a veteran running back here? Somebody to at least, compete with Jerome Ford to see if Jerome is totally ready to take over the RB2 running back 2 job. But for Perrion Winfrey, look, you try to stick up for the guy. You try to appreciate the fact that it's difficult to be a rookie defensive tackle in the NFL. You try to give, guys opportunity to prove themselves, certainly as people and certainly as players. And just, when it seemed like the talking point was starting to become about Perrion was maybe starting to see the light as a player, just couldn't get out of his own way off the field. That's on him. It's 100% on him. We'll see where his, NFL future lies. But for now, the Browns have a defensive tackle room where you have a lot of confidence, the utmost confidence in a player like Dalvin Tomlinson, Maurice Hurst, Tristan Hill. I mean, these are players that you think can contribute, but neither of the two have been able to stay healthy in their time in the NFL. So it's obviously big issues there with both of those young men. Then you get to, obviously Sione Ika. And I believe with Ika, the opportunity is there. I think Ika is going to probably be just, and I hate to say it, but probably just handed a role here. He brings something as far as size and girth that nobody else in this defensive tackle room does. And if you're trying to shut down the run between he and Dalvin Tomlinson, you figure 330. Say 340-ish for Ika. You're talking almost 700 pounds a human being. If anything, hopefully they can at least clog the interior running lanes to slow down the opposing team's running game. Does Tommy Togiai show a flash that we haven't seen in his first 2 years here? Who knows? Does Jordan Elliott, year 4, does it all finally come together for him? But Perrion Winfrey today has given the Browns a situation they did not want. They certainly did not need. And a room that was already weak, a positional group that was already weak. It's just straight top heavy. You've got that great player in Dalvin Tomlinson. And like we said the other day, there's a player on that defensive tackle, in that defensive tackle room who doesn't have their question marks, who doesn't have their warts, and you can't bank on 4 other guys all finally finding something that I haven't found to this point in the NFL. So the Browns did what they had to do, and I am sure Perrion Winfrey knew the deal. But again, why are you doing out late at night? Getting closer to the beginning of camp. You can't get yourself in these situations if you can't exhibit self-control. Perrion Winfrey obviously showed that it's just kind of where he's at. And, until Perrion Winfrey can find a way to grow up and understand the opportunity that he has in this league to play in the NFL, it's not a guarantee. It is an opportunity. And it comes with, certain things. Obviously, you got to cross your T's, got to dot your I's, you got to toe the line. And for Perrion Winfrey, this has been the biggest issue for him in his 1 year in Cleveland. And to be fair, there probably were opportunities. Browns probably could have cut bait with Perrion Winfrey in April. And I don't think anybody would have thought too much about it. Just he was getting off the path early as a rookie, finally got back on the path, then the off field, and now this latest incident. So your Cleveland Browns major news of the day, and we're going to switch it up here. We're going to talk a little bit linebacker here, and actually coincide nicely because not a lot of linebackers on the Browns roster. So it really was only going to be a 2-segment show as far as the linebackers are concerned. But big Cleveland Browns news of the day. Perrion Winfrey has been released. Final warnings. You can't toe the line. You can't toe the line. Perrion Winfrey has been released. Cleveland Browns with an open roster spot. We're going to continue here. We will get to the linebackers. A word here from our new sponsor as we continue here. Jeff Lloyd, appreciate you all for being along for the ride on your latest Locked On Browns. Our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week, all season long. Whether you're prepping for a draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So with draft prep underway for the upcoming season, let's see who Vinny has picked out for us on this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Players of the Week. Looking to make a smooth turn in fantasy football snake drafts? With the last pick in the first round and first pick in the second round, you will be guaranteed to have a winning 1-2 punch of workhouse power in your backfield when taking the Colts' Jonathan Taylor and Browns' Nick Chubb back-to-back. While Taylor is a perfect rebound candidate in a more run-friendly overall offense in Indianapolis, Chubb is also set up to dominate with more of the combined workload in Cleveland. Vinny Iyer from Locked On Fantasy Football is going to help you win your fantasy championship, and eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. With eBay Guaranteed Fit and over 122 million parts and accessories for your vehicle right at your fingertips, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Air filters, brakes, batteries, taillights, alternators, shocks, struts, you name it, eBay Motors has it. And they'll make sure it's the right fit for your car because eBay Guaranteed Fit helps you understand exactly what part you need for your vehicle the first time. So go forth, switch gears, crank the AC, and say goodbye to sweating if your ride needs a little fixing up. because now you'll know you'll always be set up for success from the get-go. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, everything your vehicle is calling for is just a click away. For the parts and accessories that fit your vehicle, just look for the green check. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices at ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. Continuing on here, your host, Jeff Lloyd, with your latest Locked On Browns. Appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. Join the everyday crowd. Subscribe to the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Locked On Browns is always available, always free, wherever you get your podcast. As we said, we were going to headline this today with the with the Browns training camp linebacker preview position. And not a lot of linebackers on the roster, obviously, as the Cleveland Browns. It's never been a position that has been prioritized by this current regime. To be fair, the last time the Browns spent money on a linebacker, anybody know? Anybody know? Jamie Collins. Yes. And how did that one work out? But you look at this team, and there's probably 3 linebackers that the Browns ideally want to see the bulk of the reps. 2 of them obviously come with question marks. Is Anthony Walker 100%? Is Anthony Walker completely ready to go after getting injured in week 2 against Pittsburgh Steelers last season? Sione Takitaki, who was having an incredible season last year, as the Browns shifted him to middle linebacker, as the injuries were starting to mount, and was really, really showing well there. And then Sione Takitaki, obviously the Deshaun Watson return game against the Houston Texans. Sione Takitaki goes down. ACL, still not sure, and I'm sure we'll find more on Saturday once training camp officially begins. My assumption is he will start on the PUP list, and then we'll see when Sione Takitaki is available to return. To think he'd be available week 1, it's probably a little far-fetched. Maybe even week 2. Is it something where he's going to be out to the bye, meaning October? Still a little cloudy in that. The Browns have not given up much information to that point. And then there is JOK. And with JOK, I think the clear answer the Browns would like to have at the linebacker position is simple. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah in year 3 puts it all together. The Browns get the interior defensive tackle play they need to keep the linebackers clean. So you can have this special talent, and granted it hasn't all been put together yet for JOK, but that is the key here. That is the plan. The plan is to basically have a linebacker who's as athletic as your safeties. But when you have these guys getting caught in the muck and mire, and they're not allowed to just basically run around, read, recognize, diagnose, and tackle. Simple. That's what he has linebackers to do. But it's been difficult to this point. JOK, look, to his own discredit, a lot of times he's taken himself out of the play or overrun a play, but it's understandable. I mean, that's what happens with younger linebackers in the NFL. Sometimes the running backs are better than you. It's just the way it goes. And, these are lessons that you learn as you grow within the league. As far as, are the Browns going to bring in a linebacker? Look, if the Browns wanted to pay a linebacker, they would have done it to this point. So, I mean, we can have these conversations and discussions till we're blue in the face, but it's not going to happen. It's just not the way they do it. It's not a position that this team views putting money on. Even Sione Takitaki would not have been here if the ACL injury did not occur. He most likely would have moved on to better money somewhere else. For him, it was the right move for him. It was a good move for the Browns. Even though you're going with the new defense, you're coming off an ACL injury and all the rehab. The last thing you want to do is basically, be uprooted, begin, a new chapter of your life with a new team, a new city. You're learning new doctors. You'd rather do all of this with, the people that you started it through. So it's a good position for Sione because he gets to be on this 1-year deal, hopefully trying to, get the opportunity to truly explore free agency next year as a healthy player. It's going to be interesting to see the way he's used because, there's always been times where Sione's been an outside linebacker. Obviously, at BYU, he had experience as an edge rusher. So it's, is that something they could find ways to use here? I mean, certainly could. And obviously, with a defense coordinator like Jim Schwartz and his emphasis on getting after the quarterback, obviously a player like Sione Takitaki, the fact that he can play true linebacker and get in and pressure the quarterback obviously has a ton of appeal to Jim Schwartz, obviously new defensive coordinator. Now, Anthony Walker, it's certainly interesting because when we get all these talks of, Myles Garrett and leadership and Anthony Walker is the leader of the Cleveland Browns defense. And Anthony Walker has been a leader his entire career in the NFL. We all remember, the words from Darius Leonard about Anthony Walker. You talk about, at the time, one of the NFL's best linebackers, touting his own teammate for his work ethic, for his working with younger players, with him taking over a film room, having time with teammates outside of the facility, going over opposing teams' film. This is just the type of player Anthony Walker is. Anthony Walker will probably be some sort of coach in some sort of aspect of football when his career is done, whatever he chooses to do with it. But Anthony is the key here, because just having Anthony on the field, Anthony's a communicator. Anthony is a guy that makes the calls. Anthony gets everybody on the same page. Key part of this Cleveland Browns defense. Ideally, most of the reps would go to Anthony Walker, Sione Takitaki, and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. Again, the plan is most likely for Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah to be a linebacker that never comes off the field. There is also the possibility that when you go to a dime situation, you could put Grant Delpit at linebacker, because you have McLeod. Obviously, you have Juan Thornhill. And if you wanted to get a little bit more athletic at your dime linebacker position, you could use Grant Delpit, who has a lot of experience playing closer to the line of scrimmage, playing within the box, and can contribute that way as well. But this is supposed to be the role for JOK to take, to just grab hold of here in year 3. We'll see if that works out or it doesn't work out. And again, here, between the three of them, and there's not going to be a lot of reps, ideally, because, as we talked about yesterday with Charles McDonald, I also did, a spot yesterday with Peter Bukowski for our Locked On NFL show. And, the point is to, get these guys off the field as quickly as possible and let Jim Schwartz and his secondary play and Jim Schwartz and his defensive line play get after and harass the living daylights out of the opposing team's quarterback. That is a game plan. That is what basically every team that thinks they are going to win, that is their defensive game plan. Stop the run, get the more athletic players on the field, and then get after the quarterback. But some guys got to play linebacker. Obviously, some guys got to contribute to stop the run. That is the Browns' plan. I think it's good enough. Obviously, again, probably still looking to add a veteran defensive tackle. I wonder if it would be 2 now with Winfrey out of the fold, out of the mix. I'm not sure. But a nice start would be to at least get one of them in here and get one in here, quickly. Matt, we'll do it again. Ionitis. Shelby Harris, anyone is, come on. Get your butts down in West Virginia. Get your butts down to the Greenbrier. The Browns need some assistance. Going to switch it up here over to segment 3. We're going to talk about the rest of the linebacker room here. Question here is going to be, how many calls are they going to let Bubba Ventrone have in regards to special teams players? Because that certainly could have a huge influence on how the rest of the linebacker room is going to shake out for the Browns. Because if you're going to give Bubba Ventrone the players he wants on special teams, it certainly aids a couple of these guys here that the Browns had brought in free agency. And, of course, one of their own coming back here. So we'll get to that here. Segment 3, your latest Locked On Browns. Jeff Lloyd, your host. Appreciate everybody for being along for the ride. Welcome you all back here. Segment 3. Obviously, we've gotten some great content thus far this week. Your defensive end preview, your defensive tackle preview. Well, that one didn't hold up so well. Not that it had Charles McDonald on yesterday from Yahoo. I hope you all enjoyed that. And if you haven't gotten to that yet, my God, you need to get to that. Charles McDonald is one of the better football minds. If you're not familiar with Charles's work, I suggest you do. Make sure you're following at Fortverts. Charles is, in my opinion, one of the better breakdown film guys and just overall analysis of the NFL, in my opinion. So make sure you're checking all of that out. Continuing here with the linebacker group, and as always, thank you everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen, of course, as always. You get to the rest of the linebacker room, and you get to Tony Fields. And this is, we'll start with Tony Fields. Ironically enough, we bring up that Texans game from last year where Sione Takitaki went down. Tony Fields was an absolute world beater that day. Tony Fields single-handedly probably won that game for the Cleveland Browns. There were other things and other factors that worked out for them well that day. But Tony Fields just had, that's, for now and probably for a while, that's probably the ceiling of Tony Fields. But Tony Fields has always been an intriguing player, always a player, even in college where he played in space, came from West Virginia where he played in the 3-3-5. And I think that does have some appeal here to Jim Schwartz. So the question, obviously, for Tony Fields is going to be can he get an opportunity? Because for Tony Fields, you're looking more to get reps as a linebacker, whereas he's going to be competing against some guys as far as a roster spot who may be guys that primarily are going to play special teams. So Tony Fields is going to have to play really, really well as a linebacker and then find a way to play special teams because if he does make this roster, it's going to be one of these guys who was brought in with the focus on special teams. That's going to be one of the guys that leaves the roster. Jacob Phillips, it's going to be a really tough spot here. Jacob Phillips in year 4 now, litany of injuries in his time here with the Browns. And, there's always been a couple of times each season where you got to see everything that at least I thought I saw when Jacob Phillips was coming out of LSU. I said at the time, I don't care if Patrick Queen goes round 1, I'll take Jacob Phillips wherever he goes, and I think I'll get a better return. Fairly, that did not work out, as obviously Patrick Queen has found health. Jacob Phillips has not. So Jacob is now in a really, really tough spot here in year 4 with a new defensive coordinator. And he's kind of in that same spot that Tony Fields is as well. He's going to be a guy that if he really shows up well at linebacker, the Browns are going to have to make some difficult decisions. But if they start cutting some of these special team specialists, so to speak, that these guys are going to have to fill in those roles. That's where you get to Adams, obviously. That's where you get to Kunasik, Pete Smith's boy, who loves him to death. These guys both play specials, and they play specials well. Kunasik has already become kind of a Jim Schwartz, pet. Jim Schwartz is a big Kunasik fan. Obviously, when your coach puts on your jersey and comes to practice with it on, it kind of understands maybe, that he obviously kind of likes your game, kind of likes the work ethic, kind of likes what you bring to the table. So a good spot for Jordan to be in, a fun player. I liked him last year when he got the opportunity. And again, he was a part of the litany of injuries as the Browns just seemed to lose every single linebacker that they had on their roster last year. Adams does have this advantage. Adams obviously has played special teams for Bubba Ventrone in the past. So that's certainly something that aids him well. It serves him well. So, going to be a tough spot there for guys like Jacob Phillips and Tony Fields when the special teams coach is already kind of bringing in some of his own type of guys. Closing out the room, you got Mohamed Diabate. Obviously the longest of long shots. Charlie Thomas was a fun player at Georgia Tech. Definitely a tweener type of player. So, the question there is, how exactly does he fit in? He's kind of got like a Ronnie Harrison type of body, Ronnie Harrison type of build where, he's kind of built like a linebacker, sort of a safety, definitely this hybrid defensive player. But, for Charlie Thomas, he's going to have to show well in a hybrid defensive role, and he's going to have to show well in special teams. JOK is making this roster. Anthony Walker is making this roster. Sione Takitaki is making this roster. You're going to be able to keep a guy for the time that Sione Takitaki is off the roster. But there's truly just 2 spots to essentially be had here for the Browns. And it's going to be a really, really difficult battle in camp here for one of these guys to cement their spot. And whoever it is going to have to play specials because if the special teams guys leave because these guys beat them out, or the special teams guys are going to have to be able to contribute in some linebacker sets because if it's anything like last year and there were a lot of injuries, the Browns are going to have to call on every single available linebacker to come in and help. Now, we weren't able to get to it yesterday, obviously, because we had Charles McDonald on. The white throwbacks that will be worn 3 times next year. First off, the white helmet, absolute fire. It is just a great look. The entire white uniform. But this is where the Browns were really, really smart and really, really savvy. You want to have somebody model these for you. yeah, why not take the 6'4", 265-pound tight end who is absolutely yoked up? Look, David Njoku can make anything look good. He's just, I mean, aesthetically, he is just built like a Greek god. So it was smart in that respect to have David Njoku, model these uniforms. I love the look. And there's a lot of these retro uniforms that are coming out right now. And I think I speak for myself and a lot of others when we look at these. And the first thing that comes to our mind is maybe those should be, the everyday uniforms, and you have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going back to the creamsicles, which is just an absolutely gorgeous look nowadays. It wasn't so pretty back then, and anybody says it was, they're lying. But it is a nice look now. Seattle Seahawks dropped theirs today. The silver pants, the blue jerseys. It just looks ridiculously good. Ironically enough, the Seattle Seahawks will be wearing those when the Browns head out to Seattle this year. So obviously I'll get a look at those, firsthand. But a lot of great work is being done here. And look, these NFL franchises, they're not dumb. Selling merch is a huge revenue thing. And by introducing these every year and doing the build up, and I don't know if anybody saw the Titans today. The Titans, from what I gather, is they're going to go with a Houston Oilers kind of retro throwback look, which is another fantastic uniform from back in the day. So, look, digging back into the past here, sometimes it's a really good thing. The NFL is rolling out some great uniform combinations in the past, and they will find a way to line their pockets as fans will run. And I mean run to the team stores, to the team site to buy this merchandise. But yes, all the way, yeah, so closing out, the white uniforms, the white helmet, all fire from me. Love every single bit of it. Your Browns' big headline of the day, Perrion Winfrey, in the latest incident of the Perrion Winfrey I cannot get out of my own way, has now been released after a late night incident. We're just going to say with allegations, because we have no proof to the validity of any of this. And I don't think the Browns care, and the Browns didn't care. The Browns heard Perrion Winfrey incident and said, well, that's 276. We told you, final warning, no more, you're gone. Browns have a big hole now at the defensive tackle position. Does it press them into getting after the veteran defensive tackle that we all feel they so desperately need? We'll continue to monitor that here in the upcoming days and weeks here on Locked On Browns. I'm your host, Jeff Lloyd, 7th season covering the Cleveland Browns. Appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. Make sure you join the everyday crowd by subscribing to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Locked On Browns is always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on the LOB. Let's go Browns.